I've been fortunate enough to have been earning over 500K a year in sales since my early 30s, which has been almost a decade now. So today, I'm going to share with you the raw reality of what it's like, things I didn't realize, and how it's impacted my life. And if you stay at the end, I'll even share with you the number one mistake I made that cost me literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, so you can be way smarter than me. Now, if you don't know who I am, I'm Marcus Shen. I help B2B salespeople and teams install sales playbooks to help them blow out their sales targets, max their comp plan, and create the life of their dreams. Now, a little bit of context. I grew up really poor. My parents were actually Chinese immigrants that ended up starting their own Chinese restaurant. So they worked super hard for years and didn't really make much money. And me growing up as a kid, I worked in a restaurant too, literally in back of the restaurant, chopping vegetables, to being a dishwasher, to cooking, to literally every possible role in the restaurant. I started at the age of 5. And I remember seeing how hard my parents worked. And as they started to climb up, realistically, they really didn't make that much money even as a time went on, because restaurants are pretty hard to make money. And at best, I think they're maybe taking home $50K a year, all in, combining with my mom and dad. So they really didn't make that much money. As I got older, and eventually they sold the restaurant, and I had to go to college and get different jobs. And I literally remember in college, I was working 3 different jobs and getting paid minimum wage just to basically make ends meet and pay for my college tuition on my own. And the reality is I didn't grow up with people that had money. I didn't even know anybody that was making any real money, making 6 figures or over 200K, which is what I considered doctor money or smart people money. So as I entered into sales, and like my story, I struggled at first, eventually started figuring it out and started making a little bit of money. And I started to stack my income over time, started making more money, first breaking 100K, then 150, then 200, 250, then finally hitting over 500K plus in my early 30s. That was a point where I was like, wow, this is a little bit different than what it used to be like. But here's what's really interesting. At that point, once I crossed over that mark, it felt exciting, but also at the same time, completely boring. Like it was just like another day. And it was interesting as I kind of reflect back, I didn't feel any happier at that time. I wasn't happier. I didn't feel more joy. It was like, oh, cool. I really didn't feel like my life had really changed that much at that point. Now, what is interesting is what I found is when you go from being completely broke, not making any money, crawl my way to that point, is having more money did allow me to solve problems, which is actually really nice. So having more money is give you more options for fixing things. If something breaks, you're not as worried. Like something in your house breaks, you're like, okay, it's annoying, but at least you have the money to take care of those problems. So if you have surprise expenses, something happens to the car or whatever, it is nice not really having to worry about money. Or if you're going out to eat, not really worrying about the prices on the menu. Ultimately, it just helps solve a lot of the kind of basic money problems I used to have when I was just making minimum wage and in college. So I'll say on one hand, it didn't actually make me happier because I was making over 500K, but because it solved some of these common problems that I grew up with early on, by solving those problems and not having to worry about money, indirectly, it did lead to me being happier, knowing I didn't have to stress about those type of things. Knowing that if I need a $2,000 repair, yeah, it's annoying, but I'm going to be fine. I'm not going to be worried about that, which is the first thing I realized, especially at that point. The next thing I also realized was the more money I made, the more responsibility I took on, and the more responsibility I had, the more stress that came with that responsibility, especially in the working world. So at this point, I remember being in my early 30s, I was running a pretty large sales organization of 85 employees to start. And when you deal with 85 different personalities and different human beings who have different worries, concerns, issues, and problems of their own, it can be quite stressful. And I remember, especially early on when I first jumped into that role, and I was constantly on the phone working with HR or dealing with different problems or dealing with potential big loss deals. There was just far more pressure online to actually deliver. So even though it seemed like, yeah, making great money feels really good, it does come at a cost. And for me, especially when I first broke that barrier, it's realizing it came with just other, responsibilities and stress that I wasn't quite ready for. And that was really hard because now, instead of just being able to clock out and clock in, clock out of my time, when I ran that big of a sales org, I mentally felt like I could never really turn it off. And that was pretty hard. That was very stressful. Now, obviously for everybody, it might be a little bit different depending on the opportunity vehicle you're in. So for example, if you're in enterprise sales, your stress levels might be potentially that you only have one big deal you're going to close for the year. That's going to be tens of millions of dollars, but you might have a goose egg the entire year. So there's an enormous amount of pressure and responsibility on you to make sure you're absolutely nailing every part of the process and working that deal properly to actually get to close before your end of year, so you can actually hit the number you want to hit and make the money you want to make. It's like that saying, more money, more problems. I think it's more so it's more money, more stress. So it's something you want to be mentally just aware of, even from a job responsibility perspective, especially when you're first breaking through. Now, I have found though, over time, because now I've been making well over that for almost a decade now, it does get a little bit easier to manage the stress because you get a little more used to it. So maybe you're more neutral to the stress, or perhaps maybe I'm just getting better at what I'm doing, which is also potentially could be part of the reason why it's a little bit less stressful than it used to be. The third thing I realized is you are paid in direct proportion to the value you bring the marketplace. The more value you produce for the marketplace, the more you earn. And it's not just about working really hard and putting a lot of hours in, because at the end of the day, I know people who work way harder than I do in really, really hard jobs, working outside, dealing with the elements, working way more hours, they're earning far less. Because the reality is the work that they're producing may not be as valuable as what someone else is doing. So the truth is, if you meet somebody who's earning, say, $2 million a year, that means the value they're producing far outweighs the value you're producing. And even if you believe your value is higher, the market determines that other person to be far more valuable. And this is something I realized as I was working my way up to get to that point. Because even though I knew early on I can grind and work really hard, and I'll say you can probably grind, work super hard to 100K, 150, 200K, 250K, maybe even 300K. But once you're trying to break free past that, you can only work so hard. You can only work so many hours. And at that point, you must become more valuable. And the way you become more valuable is you increase your skill set to go to the next level. So for me, because I love the company I was at, I needed to really break free and really get to 400K, 500K, and plus and beyond. I had to go to higher level executive roles where they had bigger compensation plans, there was more equity, and there was more upside as a result, which on the flip side, like in the second point I mentioned, I also knew it would require taking on more responsibility and stress. And in order for me to do it effectively and not burn out, that meant I had to scale up. I had to improve every skill set to get to that point. For you that you're watching this and maybe you've been working super hard and you're trying to break to the next level, you have to ask yourself, what skills do you need to develop and what can you invest into for yourself to make yourself better, whatever skills, to go to the next level so you can increase your value to the marketplace. For some people out there, you might already be maxing out your comp plan. You're the best, you're the number one person, and you're already making the highest possible amount of money in the job that you're in. At that point, if you add more skills, it may not necessarily change your comp structure or how much you earn. That may mean you're fully tapped out of your opportunity vehicle. So for example, I knew for me, after earning over 500K for several years in a row, and I was averaging over 600K plus a year, I knew in order for me to go to the next level in my compensation and my earnings, I could either keep the same path and go continue to promote up my career, which meant taking on more responsibility, more travel, etc., or I could choose a different opportunity vehicle, such as my own business. And then I ended up ultimately going to my own business because I found it to be a better opportunity vehicle. Now, one of the next key learnings is what I have found, especially as you start to have success, especially in the company you're at, you're having success, you're crushing on sales, you're crushing on whatever you're doing. Ultimately, you will eventually pay the success tax in sales, meaning the more you earn in sales, the more you over deliver on your number, the more you are gifted a larger quota, a larger number the following year. That usually increases at a rate that does not match your comp plan. Meaning, let's just say, for example, if you delivered, let's call it $10 million in revenue and you earn 500K, next year, your target might be 15 million. And just to hit target, to get to 15 million, it might be 450K. So you might have to close even more, right, over your comp plan, maybe close 17 mil just to make the same amount of money that you made prior at a lower target amount. And I found this time and time again, especially for working for big companies or Fortune 500, the target moves every single year. If you tie back some of the other core lessons with that success tax, which I'm sure you have seen in other past roles you have, that can become very stressful as you have to take on more responsibility to be able to deliver at that same level and higher, actually keep earning the same amount. The fifth thing I've also realized is money magnifies who you already are. I've heard some people say money is the root of all evil and money's not good. It makes people bad. Rich people are bad. And I'm not really surprised if you watch the media. Typically in the media, the bad people are always the people who actually make a good income. They do well for themselves, or they're rich, or they're wealthy, which I have found, generally speaking, money magnifies who you are. Like who you are when you're earning 50K a year, as long as you have core consistent values and who you are. When you're making 500K a year, you're making $1 million a year, you're ultimately going to magnify those same values. That's just a reality. So if you're really cheap and you don't say give money away, you don't give to your community when you're making 50K a year, at 250K a year, you're probably keep the same way of thinking. At 500K a year, you'll probably keep the same way of thinking. Right? I've just found that. And I've seen some people where I already sense they're maybe a little bit of a jerk, even when they're making, 150K, and then suddenly they're making 500K or more. They actually become more of a jerk, which is, at the end of the day, it ultimately magnifies who you are. And this is why, at the end of the day, money is simply just a tool and it magnifies who you are. So if you have a good heart and you serve other people and you serve your community and maybe you're big on donations, the reality is the more money you make, you'll probably end up just doing more of the same thing, just at a higher level. So I think I found that to be very, very true for the most part as a result. And if you see people that completely change, oftentimes I found when you really think about it, they were just hiding what their true self was to begin with. The sixth thing I realized is, and this should probably be no surprise, is obviously as you make more, you're going to spend more. And this type of lifestyle creep can create a lot of pressure. And I remember literally at one point I was living on a $29,500 base salary and in B2B sales, living with 2 other roommates, trying to keep my costs as low as possible. And I remember, I think my total burn was, actually, I don't even remember what my total burn was. It was probably maybe $2K a month, probably less than that actually at that point. And naturally, as you make more money, you're going to spend some more money as well. I definitely have found that to be the case. And even though I did grow up really frugal and I do my best to still maintain frugality, even at this stage, I have found my monthly burn has continued to creep up. So that by itself can create a lot of pressure because then you become used to certain things as a result. So there's always going to be pressure to maintain that certain lifestyle. And sometimes you'll see, especially if you buy a nicer home or you live in a nicer neighborhood or you're spending time at the country club with other people who are doing well themselves, this pressure gets created to keep up with the Joneses. And I know it seems really stupid and really superficial, but that's just a reality. That's just the truth is if you drive an old beater car, and that's a car you've been driving around for years, you drive like a 2000 Honda Accord, it's got 400,000 miles on it, and like the wheels falling off, and you've had it for years. When you're meeting up with other people in a nice neighborhood and you're pulling up that car, you're gonna feel a little bit of pressure. I know it's easy to say no, you won't feel any pressure, but I felt the pressure. That's what ended up happening as well. I remember even when I was in corporate America, and I was always one of those guys where I was super frugal, even we had to wear suits for work. We wore like a shirt and tie, a little bit old school. And I would literally go and get like the cheapest possible suits. I literally would go to Target and they used to sell these suit separates. And I'd be able to get like a top and a bottom for, I think it was like $100 total. And then I would get it tailored so it'd fit a little better. So the tailored would cost maybe like $30, $40. So for $130, I got a pretty decent suit while everyone else was getting suits that are $300, $400, $500, even more. And I remember, especially feeling kind of that pressure, feeling a little bit insecure, like when they show me their suits and they're just way better quality than mine. And I've always been pretty cheap, even with suits, when I don't see a lot of value in it. Even though they're spending $500 to $1,000 for a suit, I spend $130. Now, over time, as I progress in my career, now I'm leading people and people are seeing me as a different level. I felt a little bit self-conscious. I started buying a little bit nicer suits, not necessarily $500, $1,000, $2,000 suits like some of my peers or some of the leaders. I would spend $300 on a suit. So that started to increase over time as well. So even if I didn't want to do it, naturally this pressure created because of that, which means the more your burn is, the more you're going to end up spending more money you have to actually earn as a result. And again, there's nothing wrong with spending money, by the way, so don't get me wrong, but that does create pressure for you to live a certain way. And obviously, if you're married and whatnot, if you have kids, it will go up as well. So for me, I ended up getting married. I had a kid, and we live in a nice area with a nice house. So we have a certain level of pressure that does get created as a result of that. The seventh thing I've also realized is there's a level of internal competitive pressure. So I shared a lot of these external pressures, of course, right, which kind of happens when you work in a corporation, your number gets raised up, your lifestyle goes up as well. But I found for me personally, and this is something I still continue to struggle with, which is I've created a lot of internal competitive pressure. So once I hit that 500K at 31, I was like, okay, I want to beat that the next year. And what about the next year? I want to beat that. And I constantly keep raising the bar. And what's really dangerous is I'm always wanting to detach from the outcome, but I'm also really competitive with myself. And the reality is, as we all know, we do our best to always improve the best version of ourselves. But most of the time, our incomes, our lives are not a linear, straight up into the right type of life. It can go up and down like this, which if you're not careful, that can create a lot of pressure on yourselves, and it might leave you like beating yourself up. And I'm pretty hard on myself. I've always been hard on myself. So that's something I'm constantly working on still, even to this day. I share that with you because there's a level of pressure as well. And again, even if I was making 50K a year, because of how I'm wired, I'd be like, I want to make 55K, 60K. And that's how I've always been. What I found is once I started making well over $250,000, I started creating more pressure for myself on beating myself out. And a lot of it has to do with who you talk to and who you're around, because we're always competing against everybody else. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But again, at the end of the day, that pressure is internal. The eighth thing I realized, and I never thought I'd worry about this, especially being new in sales early on, especially starting in sales and struggling, I didn't think this would ever be something I had to worry about. But I worry now because I have one kid. At the time of this video, he's 7 years old. And I worry about how do I raise him so he's not spoiled? Because I think about how I grew up, and I grew up in a very small town, Springfield, Oregon, if you're familiar with that, a little house on 407 S Street, not in a great neighborhood. Wasn't a great neighborhood back then. I think it's probably a little better now, but wasn't a great neighborhood back then. And I saw how hard my parents worked. Okay, I remember going to the restaurant, working late hours. I remember seeing my parents working 80 hours a week at the restaurant. I remember growing up in a not a great house. I remember wearing secondhand clothes. I remember eating ramen. I remember worrying about when not having money. I literally worried like when my dad would tell me that someone like held the restaurant up, stole money out of the cash register. I was worried we had to shut the restaurant down, have no source of income, had to be homeless. So I remember all these worries as a kid growing up. And that's why, I have stability so much. And then I got to see my parents rise up. And I remember also at the same time, my parents never bought me anything. Right? We just couldn't afford anything. Like I remember literally my grandpa was on food stamps, and literally he's using food stamps, and he would like buy me a toy at the grocery store, and that was really exciting. But I'm like, oh, this is so crazy. And all those experiences have wired me a certain way. Have given me a level of grit and perseverance, which I believe it definitely served me in sales and served me in life. But that's something that my 7-year-old is not going to really see, because now he's been mentally able to understand what's going on. Lives in great houses, right? Has amazing, nice luxury cars he rides around in. Like pretty much whatever, we don't buy him anything, but pretty much whatever he wants, we can get. It's not a big thing. We get to send him to the best schools. We get to send him to the best camps. We're really fortunate to be in that financial situation. And even though we do our best not to spoil and buy him these type of things, but he's also in this immediate quick fix world where not only does he have all of that, living in a nice home, nice everything. Want to order some Amazon? Boom, here in 2 days. Want to watch a video that's not available on whatever? I can just rent it right now on Amazon. Like we can watch movies on the instant. So he has this level of instant gratitude on the spot. And I worry, especially at this point, like how do I curate and create the environment for him so he doesn't grow up spoiled? This is something I've been thinking about for literally years now. And I do my best to try to show him how hard I work, and I show up, I give 100% everything that I do for the business. But he is also going to a very different environment where perception is reality. And that does scare me because I know delayed gratification is one of the most important values to instill into people who want to become successful in the future. So that's something for sure has been top of mind for me, especially at the level of income that we know we're earning at. The ninth thing I realized, especially in my early 30s, is you pay a lot of taxes as a high earning W-2 employee. I didn't really think much about it until I started getting to that point, until I started getting these big tax bills and I owe a bunch of money at the end of the year. And it's stressful. It is like super stressful when you're like, oh crap, yeah, you make 500K, but you got to pay about 40% to the federal government. You pay another like 10% to state Oregon. You're paying like 50% basically of taxes out the door before you get to even touch that money. That's really painful. And as I look back and I reflect, and by the way, I didn't do anything with that. I continued to pay for several years, not really thinking about reducing my tax liability. Because again, you have only so many options. But as I look back, I'm like, man, if I knew better about starting a business earlier, because you are far more tax advantaged as an entrepreneur. If only I had heavily considered buying multifamily property so I can have the depreciation to actually write off. And again, I didn't realize it at that point, because before it was never a problem. Because I didn't realize that, it cost me literally hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxes that I ended up paying over the years as a result, in which if I was smarter about it and I was more proactive about it, I could implement different strategies in place to help reduce my taxable income. But again, I'm not adverse to paying taxes. I'm going to do my due diligence as a member of society and pay my taxes and pay my dues. Marcus was a little bit smarter and knew the tax game better. I could have made different decisions back then that would have served me far more today. The 10th thing I realized, and I didn't really see this coming, is your friend groups may potentially shift over time, especially if the gap is too far between you and them. I know that sounds really strange, and this is not something that I expected, but the reality is, depending on some of your friend groups growing up, if you all came from relatively similar social circles, suddenly if your life starts to change in a different way, you're maybe surpassing them in responsibilities at work, to skill levels, to who you actually become. You actually change to become a best version of you. You start making more money. That might be weird for some of your friends that know you as old version. Like, I look back and I used to be known as the Chanimal, right? And this is back in like high school and college. I was crazy. I used to party all the time and just be absolutely nuts. And it's embarrassing, but I'm no longer that person. I've changed, and for the better, I believe. I hope for the better. And sometimes the people that you grew up with, some of your friends group from high school or college or even early post-graduation, they may not like that. I'm not saying all my friends are that way. I definitely lost some friends as a result. And I could just tell, just based off how they say certain things, the comments they would make, and there was a level of probably some sort of envy or jealousy. And it's really sad. And of course, I'm not one of those guys I'll be rubbing their face and bragging about it. The reality is, when you show up in nice cars, you have nice things, or you're doing different things, or maybe you want to go to nice places and they can't necessarily afford to go to type of places, that may create a little bit of a gap. And for some people, it's not going to be a big deal, but for others, that may end up being an issue as a result. And I look at even to today, my closest friends now are completely different people than they were 10 years ago. My closest friends now are all people who are all making great incomes. All of us are actually all entrepreneurs. We all run a similar problem. We have similar issues. So we have a bond. It's really deep for this season in life. As you progress in your career and you start to see yourself uprising in the roles that you're playing and the money that you're making, and you start to see some of your other friends that you grew up with starting to separate away, you definitely don't take it personally, right? And I always do my best. Obviously, I'm still friendly. I'll still reach out and send them Christmas cards, etc. But I know we're not as close as we used to be. And it's not going to deter me from doing what I want to do, but it's just something you want to be aware of. But on the flip side, it opened my eyes to create some new friend groups with other people who are at a similar level and beyond, actually, quite a ways beyond me, which has been really cool because it's been really inspiring for me personally. So that was definitely an interesting reality to learn. Number 11, this is a big one. Especially when you're making a decent income, you have to learn how to invest it to actually multiply the income. And do not wait till you're making $250K, $500K or beyond to start investing. I'm really fortunate that early on, when I started my career, I started investing at 21 consistently. Now, I actually started investing money even before that, just here and there. But at 21, I started to invest consistently every single month. And it wasn't a lot of money at that time. All right. So like literally it was like investing a little bit into like books consistently, to programs, to also investing into the conferences and those things that are going to feed my brain, make me increase my skills, to even simple stuff like investing a little bit into my 401k, investing a little bit into a Roth IRA, investing a little bit into index funds. All those are really key, because what ends up happening is when you develop those habits early on, it helps you stack them as you go over time. And as you start to make more money, you can obviously increase the amount you're investing consistently, right? And if you can do that consistently, what's amazing is when you have the power of time, it really does multiply quite a bit. And I look back and I think about all the things I started investing into, right? And I'll walk you through what I was doing, and then the proportions went up. But I first started investing into myself first, even small amounts, right? And then I'll invest in these things that are basically low-hanging fruit of my 401k. Now, early on, I was not able to max out the 401k, reduce my taxable income. So I think I did 3% at first because they had a matching at 3%. So I was doing that, and then I was putting like, I think maybe 50K into my Roth, and maybe I can't remember exactly. I think half of that was towards some index funds as well, each month. And as time went on, I started to increase it more and more. So I increased how much I was investing into myself. I started to max out my 401k. Then I started to max out my Roth IRA. But then I got to the point where I couldn't. So I earned too much to do the Roth IRA. So then I had to do a traditional Roth. And then I started to increase how much I'm investing into different index funds. Started to really diversify that, and then started basically multiply that over time. And what ends up happening now, even to this day, some of them are different stocks now and different index funds now, but consistently to this point, the numbers have really multiplied, because now consistently every single month, I'm maxing out my 401k. I now know I'm way wiser about the backdoor Roths, maximize the backdoor Roths. Things for my kids fully maxed out, or we're investing a lot into different index funds now. We just bought a 6-unit multifamily unit just last month. So we're constantly investing in these things, and also into myself as well, but we're constantly increasing those amounts the more we earn. And the goal is invest as much as I can into those things, because then those things will multiply over time, because time is the ultimate thing that not everyone's going to have. So the younger you start, the better it's going to be. If you're at 250K or 500K now, if you haven't started investing consistently every single month to multiply that money, starting with yourself, which is the highest ROI, and then moving it down, I highly encourage you to start doing that now, because the habits you develop is going to be better for you down the road. Or even if you're brand new, or maybe if you're just earning like 30K a year like I was, 29.5, start with a habit now. Even if it's $1 every single month, you'll see just by learning how to do that, by building that muscle memory of doing that, it's much easier to expand and increase that amount as you start to increase your earnings every single year. And again, because I started doing this so early on by investing in those type of categories, that's what allowed me to be able to retire at 35 to do whatever I want. And the reality is, I know people who actually were earning far more than me every single year who are still paycheck to paycheck, even 5 years later. So again, the earlier you can start internalizing this message, the more powerful it's going to be. Now, I shared a lot of points so far, and some of them may seem maybe a little more negative, and that's not my goal of this video. I just wanted to share some real raw reality things that I've learned over the last really couple decades, if you will. And there are a lot of positives, obviously, right? And there's also many positives of being able to earn consistently over 500K plus. But I'm just going to share with you the two big ones I've found, because there's many things. They fall in these two big buckets. So number one, what's great about this is ultimately you have more choices, right? That's just it. Like, you have more choices, and you can really improve your quality of life. And for everybody, that means different things. And for some people, that means they want to wear luxury clothes. Some people want to buy super nice cars. Some people want to live in the fanciest homes. Those are all great ways, and there's no wrong way to leverage the income that you make, because you worked hard for it. You want to earn it. Again, so you want to invest it, but you want to take care of yourself as well. But some of the things for me personally, I found it's been really positive for me. And this is something that took me a little bit, it was a little hard for me to break free of an old money mindset, which is being able to use the money to get back more time. And that was something that took me a while to really internalize and realize, which is time is far more valuable than money. People say money equals time, or time is money. I believe time is infinitely more valuable than money. And what I mean by that is I can always get more money, right? So if I run out of money, I can always get more money. But if I run out of time, I can't get more time. So as a result of that, time is infinitely more valuable than money. A few things that's been really great for me is like using the money we've earned to be able to get more time back to do the things I want to do that are higher leverage, or I just enjoy doing more of. So For example, for the longest time, I was cleaning my house, doing everything for years. But then when I started to think about hiring cleaners, I was really resistant too, because again, I grew up really poor and literally my parents working 80 hours a week and they're cleaning at home. And I'm like, and when they were off work, I'm like, I could just do the same thing. And the reality was I didn't realize that was actually costing me more to do that. So now it's gotten to the point now where we'll hire cleaners and they'll come consistently clean our house, clean everything, do all the things I don't want to do. And I'll happily pay them because now I have more time, whether it's to work towards a business, which is higher leverage, or just spend time with my family, which is really important to me, or even to say landscaping. I personally hate trimming the grass, doing outside work, because I have really bad pollen allergies. So I hate being outside on the grass when it's during like spring season, because it's really bad in Oregon. So now I happily pay someone to come and take care of all landscaping for me. So it looks amazing. And I can't remember what I pay them, but it's pretty inconsequential, because I know if I had to do it, it would take me twice as long, probably 3 times long, maybe 5 times longer. And also it cost me more because I could be doing something that's higher leverage for the business as a result. Or shoot, instead of doing that, I'd much rather go hang out with my kid and family. That is, to me, it's far more important to me, to hiring more staff for my own business. Really important. And that's, again, it's buying back time. So for instance, I had a conversation today with an account executive, and they want to earn more money. They want to get to 500K plus. And one of the big things is, hey, listen, like I do a lot of admin work in my company. They require so much admin work. Like, I want to hire a virtual assistant that can take care of it for me. I'm like, great, that's fantastic. Let's help you get there. So again, it's buying back your time, which is really important. Another good example of something that's important for me and what's been great for me is buying better quality food. Now, when I was making $29.5, the reality is I'm buying the lowest quality meats, vegetables, packaged goods, etc., because it was pretty cheap. And it saved me obviously money. But I didn't realize how it directly impacted my energy levels, how I thought, my gut health, and just how I process everything. And I didn't realize that. And also I gained weight because of that. I got fatter because of that. But now I have the benefit of being able to order high quality organic produce, high quality grass-fed meats, high quality foods. It directly impacts our quality of life. So that's been also really amazing as well. Even high quality clothes, that's been really interesting. So before, literally, I would buy the cheapest clothes, right? The cheapest shirts, the cheapest pants, the cheapest everything. And lo and behold, they'd fall apart pretty quickly. Versus now, I understand like the price of what you pay today, the cost of what you pay tomorrow. I'd much rather pay a higher price today, so it doesn't cost me as much in the long run. So buying higher quality clothes, which has been really important for me. Now, because again, I'm still pretty frugal, if I can get the high quality clothes at a discount or a good deal, I'm going to get it too. Don't get me wrong. I don't just like arbitrarily spend money. I've now been able to have the benefit of realizing, wow, I really need to, you get what you pay for, as the saying goes. Another good example of a really good choice that's been great too is, being able to, live in a better neighborhood. Like I literally remember the first neighborhood I grew up in Springfield, Oregon. And that was like not a great neighborhood. There was like little kids just smoking cigarettes. They're under 10. Some of them were like doing drugs and just doing a bunch of weird stuff. This is as a kid. That's not a good environment for kids to grow up. Now, fortunately, I was pretty young and I realized those aren't good behaviors. And then my parents moved us to a different house later on. But that's tough. Your environment can have an impact on how you grow up and how you think. So that's really key. Us being able to choose better neighborhoods to live in the Portland metro area. So we have good neighbors who are like very diverse, who are very open-minded, who are ambitious individuals with drive. It really does raise the game for everyone, the kids around as well. That directly leads to the choice of having better quality schools. By making level income, it also lets us be able to choose the best Montessori schools, the best private schools, the best whatever, as a result, and get a long-term ROI as a result of being able to make the money we can to make those type of decisions that for most people, they're not able to make. So those are just some examples on how literally the big thing is you have more choices. You can really improve your quality of life. The second big thing is you get greater leverage when you're actually investing. And the reality is if you're thinking you can get a 10% return on something, right? Putting $100 in and getting 10% return on that is not the same as putting, say, $10,000 in or $100,000 in or $1 million in and getting 10% on that. Even though you get the same type of percentage gain, but you get outsized actual returns because you have higher leverage as a result. And that's the beautiful part about this. And it's like that saying where, I hate that saying, the rich get richer, right? And by no means, I don't consider myself rich in any ways except for rich in life, which stands for realizing I create happiness, which is something else completely different. When you have higher leverage for investing, it's amazing. This helps you in so many different ways. And this has helped me to be able to leverage the money I make to make more money, to multiply that money, which ultimately helps me build longer term wealth, which helps me build a better legacy for my family. So those are the 13 things I realized about earning over 500K plus or more a year. And the reality is there's pros and cons to everything. And obviously the pros far outweigh the cons. And I share with you this video because whether you're at $50,000 a year and you're working to get to 100K, or you're at 200,000 working towards get to 500K, there are a lot of lessons here that you can hopefully internalize as part of your journey. Things that I wish I had known early on. Now, if you want our direct help to coach you and help you max your compound to get to 250K or 500K plus, go ahead and book a call below. And if you want to see the exact sales methodology I ran to close over 140 million ARR and earn over 500K a year consistently, I'll see you in the next video right here.